Coming up on One Detroit, a closer look at school in the fall and all it will include. Hear from teachers about their concerns, plus plans for the districts and helping students with their mental health. I'm Christy McDonald, and it's all coming up on One Detroit.
Support for this program provided by W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first. The Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
From Delta Faucets to Behr Paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929. The DTE Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public TV, among the state's largest foundations committed to Michigan-focused giving. We support organizations that are doing exceptional work in our state. Visit dtefoundation.com to learn more.
Business Leaders for Michigan, dedicated to making Michigan a top 10 state for jobs, personal income, and a healthy economy. Nissan Foundation, and viewers like you.
Hi there, and welcome to One Detroit. I'm Christy McDonald. Thanks so much for joining me. As summer moves forward, we're hearing a lot about changing school plans for the fall. At the federal level, leadership is pushing for schools to be open. At the state level, Michigan has put out their recommendations for districts. There's no doubt that kids and parents are missing that in-class instruction, but it is up to the schools to make sure it's safe. Districts have multiple plans ready to put in place, and they are watching cases of coronavirus. And they have to make sure they have the funding to carry out the safety guidelines. So coming up on One Detroit, we're talking with teachers and administrators about the challenges this fall. Back in June, One Detroit devoted an entire hour to education in a COVID-19 world, and these are some of the conversations. Hear from teachers on what they struggled with in the spring and concerns for the fall, plus the head of Detroit schools on the district's plans, and then taking student mental health into consideration, and we'll end with celebrating the class of 2020. A lot of kids miss that in-person connection with their teachers, and teachers really felt the same way. Not only did they have to quickly adapt to online learning, but like some of the students, they struggled with technology. It's going to be very interesting to see what the teaching ranks will even look like this fall. There's a lot of uncertainty there. The Michigan Education Association just came out with a survey of 15,000 teachers and support staff. 7% are leaving because of coronavirus concerns, either retiring or retiring early, and another 23% are considering it. Nolan Finley talked with two middle school teachers about the future of in-classroom teaching and concerns about health.
Thank you and welcome to One Detroit. We have with us now Jeanie Wilson, a science teacher at Ann Arbor STEAM, a K-8 school, and Patrick Harris, an English teacher at Detroit Achievement Academy, also a K-8 school. Patrick, how's it going? Tell us about how this is working, trying to do your classroom instruction remotely.
I think for me, I'm mostly concerned about access. I know that my students want to learn. I know that they are motivated and they want to be engaged, but it's not so much as we weren't prepared for distance learning. I think that we weren't prepared for equity issues. We weren't prepared for access issues. Not that these issues are new, because we know that these issues has existed for forever, right? But we weren't prepared for it to smack us in the face the way that it did when Governor Whitmer said, hey, we got to shut it down.
And so by access issue, you mean access to computers, access to the internet. How have you dealt with that? Have you overcome it?
I think it's a battle. It's something that takes deliberate time and intention. And we have, personally went to families' houses and helped them get connected to internet for those who needed help. And then we've connected them to community resources. So we've helped them to get acclimated to those, free internet, free laptop, resources. Is something that truly is a systematic issue. And so even though students had access to devices or access to internet, they're still a discrepancy with speed.
Yeah.
There's still a discrepancy with how loud your house is, right? And how many siblings are sharing that device that you have, right? So like when I say access, I mean every student getting the true opportunity to really like show their best work. And I don't think that we have achieved that as a society.
Jeanie Wilson, my daughter is also an 8th grade science teacher, and it seems like that's a very hands-on course, particularly for middle schoolers. How do you transfer that hands-on education to a computer screen when you're not anywhere near the students?
Well, I'm really fortunate that our school is a project-based learning school. So what I was able to do was create projects that like had many options, like a menu of projects, so that there were lots of different ways to like dive in, no matter where you live, no matter like all the issues Patrick just mentioned. There's a lot of issues with access. In my school being very diverse, there's a lot of discrepancy between what people have access to. And so those menus of options, I also worked really hard to make sure I was reading everything out loud so that there was an audio component. But as Patrick is saying, we have no control over the volume in the house, the time they get that device. There's so many things that like in the classroom we can provide that we could not ensure access to at home.
Are all the students participating? Are you getting 100% of your students online?
It fluctuates. You know, we've had at most maybe 80% of students who were, turning in assignments and logging on to the office hours that we were holding every single day. But it was not consistent. So sometimes, that number drops, or sometimes students catch up on assignments. And that's simply because we're living in a global pandemic, right? And so there are some times where you're able and you're up and you're motivated, and then someone in your household gets sick, or someone in your immediate family dies, right? And so I let my students know it's not about the work at this point. And so my job was just to make sure that they knew that I was flexible, I was available, and I was helping them to be, make this work as accessible as possible.
School is also very much a social experience. What are they missing? How are they coping? What do you worry about?
We set up our Google Meets every day. We have a daily Google Meet starting the very first Monday we were home at 11 o'clock. And it sounds like you and I do a lot of the things the same way. At 11 o'clock every single day, and it's very social. I go over their schedule and their checklist of what they need to get done that day. And then we do what's called a morning meeting. We share something. We do some sort of activity. We've been doing a lot of fitness challenges, like the plank. And the kids, they just think it's a lot of fun. But recently, it's been a really good space for talking about like what happened in Georgia and talking about what's happening around the country and what happened in Minneapolis. Kids really want to talk. I found that to be incredibly an important and sacred time. And I actually have had kids say they don't want it to end. They don't want it to end.
So how comfortable are you both that your students are where they need to be at the end of the school year?
I think that's arbitrary, and I think it is subjective at the end of the day. I think no matter what, teachers will do what they do best. They will meet students where they are come the fall.
I really couldn't agree more. I think these arbitrary measures you're speaking of, like, that's not the goal right now. And it's not, and maybe it's time to question some of those goals. The question is like, how are the children? Not where they are. It's how are they? And I have heard kids for like maybe the first time in my career saying they miss school so much. They can't wait to get back. And it melts my heart because usually I'm hearing, oh, how many more days?
I hate this school. I'm like, oh, wow, great.
Jean, what are you worried about come fall?
I'm not that worried. I'm like the kids. I want to be back with the kids. I'm hopeful that we're going to see a shift in equity. And we're going to see a shift in that mindset of what a teacher's job is. We serve kids. We make sure they're safe. We make sure their needs are met. we make sure that our lessons are for them. They give them a place in the world. Our lessons are written and designed with the standards and the needs of kids. And I think if that's what we're doing, we're going to be wildly successful.
I was going to touch on that and say I'm a bit worried about the second wave. I know that the second wave is going to come. We're naive to think that it won't.
We have to be mindful of all of these things, and we have to follow the guidelines, and we have to wear masks. I noticed that. I don't know if masks are a bad idea, but I think we're going to have to. The health and wellness of our children and their families has to come first.
Well, there are new plans coming up for the Detroit Public Schools Community District. There are going to be shorter days, smaller class sizes. Stephen Henderson caught up with Dr. Nikolai Vitti, the superintendent there, for more on what students and parents can expect this fall.
So you have a little bit of work to be doing, as all school superintendents do. You've made some decisions, though, about what school will look like in the fall. Tell us what you've decided.
Yeah, so this wasn't randomly done. We looked at what the guidance that was issued by the CDC, OSHA, the Michigan's state opening plan, looked closely at the American Federation of Teachers document, AFT, and tried to put all of that together based on the reality that COVID has disproportionately impacted Detroit in the Black community. And so this is a collection of our best thinking based on the research that's out there, the medical best practice. And now it's about engaging stakeholders internally, externally about how they feel about it. And so far the conversations have been positive. That doesn't mitigate the fact that folks are full of anxiety, especially our most veteran teachers. They're worried about coming back, and they have legitimate reasons to worry because they're in a health category that's more at risk. But I think what I've been saying is we can't start the conversation with no, and we can't end the conversation with no. So what do we do differently? What do we do better to make you feel more at ease? Because our children have to have face-to-face instruction.
Yeah. So let's talk about the nuts and bolts of how that will work in the fall and how it's maybe a little different, as you point out, from some other districts.
Our employees will have to be tested. So everyone will be COVID tested before they return to the building. That's instructional staff, administrators, support staff. Secondly, we're planning on taking temperature checks as folks come into the workplace, including schools, children included. That will be different. We're going to have students and employees take a self health check linked to the symptoms of COVID. That'll be done through an app that will be submitted daily. Beyond that, I think that's when we get in territory where things will be similar. So smaller class sizes, not eating in the cafeteria, not exchanging classes, setting up cleaning stations or sanitation stations where students and employees will have ready access to sanitizer, making sure that our bathrooms are fully supplied. We're going to establish a hotline and an email address so that employees, students, parents can submit complaints or concerns in an anonymous way so there's no fear of retribution.
I think lots of communities deal with this same dynamic, although of course we have more of it in Detroit, is the ability of parents to be able to adapt to a school week, for instance, that's not 5 days, right? A lot of people count on school for, among other things, taking care of their kids while they're at work. Do you worry that this will play out really differently for families in Detroit?
Yeah, that's we were sensitive about that in creating the reopening plan. That's one reason why we don't intend to go to a hybrid schedule for our K-5s and K-8s. So we are expecting school every day, Monday through Friday. We typically go 7 to 7.5 hours, so we may shorten a day to 6 hours. But we are going to have school every day. And we thought about that because of the siblings reality. A lot of our parents have multiple children at different grade levels. And so it would be maddening to think about, well, the kindergartner has to go to school on Monday, but the fourth grader doesn't go until Tuesday. That would be too much of a hardship on our parents as they're, trying to get to work every day, sometimes working 2 to even 3 jobs. So we don't want to burden them in that area. But some of our large high schools may have to rely on a hybrid schedule on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday basis. There'll be day-to-day teaching, but not all students in the building at once. Just schools like Cass, Western, Renaissance are too big to have that many students in the building, at least preliminarily in the fall. That might change if things continue to improve from a COVID perspective, but right now we're just not comfortable with that in the fall. So we're also better positioned as a district because of the Connected Futures investment. The $20 million and every student having a device and internet access does level the playing field for us, so that if we have a second wave, we can go to online learning and continue the regular curriculum.
We've heard it over and over again from educators and kids, the mental health toll that this school change and really life change has taken on so many people. It's staggering. School psychologists, counselors, social workers are going to be in need more than ever before. And with every age of a student, there's a new challenge. Joining me now is Karen Anthony. She is a counselor and she's the early childhood mental health consultant for Oakland schools. Hi, Karen. It's good to see you. And also with us is Sirrita Darby. She's an educator and she created Detroit Heals Detroit to address trauma in students. Sirrita, it's good to have you too.
Likewise, glad to be here.
All right, so Karen, why don't you go ahead and just give us a sense of how you're working with students in your role with Oakland schools.
So I work in our early childhood unit. So I primarily work with our Great Start Readiness program, which is our preschoolers. So with whatever challenges that they may have when it comes to mental health, oftentimes it's connecting them with resources and making sure that they feel like they're supported so that they can be in school to learn.
Sirrita, what about you in working with teens and trauma?
So I've been an educator in Detroit for the past 5 years. With Detroit Heals Detroit, we try to combat the negative mental health impacts of COVID-19. So we've been doing that with our youth task force and really letting youth lead that movement, but also realizing that the root causes of trauma need to be addressed too. So we consider ourselves a social justice organization that aims to do that as well.
All right, Sirrita, why don't you go ahead by describing what are some of the signs of stress that students are showing at this time with schedules disrupted, also, maybe some at home, difficulties at home if there's stress there.
Absolutely, yeah. So the anxiety, the depression was already present before COVID-19, right? So now we're just amplifying that anxiety and that depression that already existed, especially in marginalized communities. I know a lot of people see our elderly population as the most vulnerable during this time, and that is true. But I also want us to recognize that our youth are some of the most vulnerable too, because when we think about this pandemic 10 years, 20 years from now, our youth are going to be feeling that burden. They're going to carry the trauma on their backs from this pandemic for generations to come, and then they're going to carry it down to their children. So we have to think about that as educators and people in this work. How do we combat that for them?
Karen, give us a sense of what are the signs that even the littles are showing that they're stressed by this?
You might see kids that start to almost amplify a lot of, I don't want to say aggression, but maybe just you see them moving a little bit more. There's this piece of isolation that we have right now that's really hard. Kids need to be out, they need to be playing, they need to be moving. And oftentimes they're just not able to have that opportunity now. So you're going to probably see more outward signs of kids behaving in different ways. But then you can also see the opposite. So sometimes you see kids kind of moving in the other direction where they might withdraw. They might kind of move into themselves. And so I think for parents, it's really just watching to see how different is my child acting.
Sirrita, what about some of the older kids? What are some of the signs and maybe even the differences between gender? Sometimes girls express themselves in a totally different way than boys do.
Yeah, definitely. So with our, our women population, our young women population, we can see it show up as anger in the classroom, right? And then I see that our boys, sometimes they get withdrawn. They're not present within the classroom. Even though they're physically present, mentally and emotionally, they're not there. They're not connected to the learning, and they can't be because of what's going on at home, because they have to think about going back home and what home may look like.
So Karen, how difficult is for a child who's trying to do the schoolwork, who's trying to keep up with everything?
There's a lot going on in families' homes. So in thinking about these little ones, especially the little ones, learning online is not really something that preschoolers especially do. It's not in them. But I think it really is hard because we learn through being together. And so these little ones aren't really getting that opportunity anymore. A lot of what I've been telling parents is kind of like, take a step back. If you feel like it's too much, communicate with your child's teacher and just let them know, this is too much right now and we can't do this. And most teachers have been really, really supportive in that.
Karen, you bring this great point. And Sirrita, let me ask you about how can parents help when parents are feeling trauma themselves, that they are just trying to get through the day themselves, let alone trying to now troubleshoot what's happening with their kids or trying to figure out, is this normal behavior? Is this not normal behavior?
This is a traumatic event for everyone involved, even if it's little. I know some people have the luxury of working from home and don't have to go to work and put themselves at risk. For those families that do, that's traumatic to go to work and put yourself at risk and then to come home and to think about how your child may be feeling that trauma too from being at school or not being at school or not feeling safe. So thinking about that for parents where they have the extra stress of thinking about themselves and then thinking about their children and their physical and mental well-being is a lot.
What about mental health services, Karen? Are we going to be seeing more of that coming from the school or at least more resources from schools across the area?
That is one of the priorities that we have right now at Oakland Schools is we are putting together plans and we are seeking out more and more resources. But I would like to say there's going to be more support in K-12, but I do know that right now our state budget is kind of up in the air. So I really would hope that it would be a priority, but I really don't have that answer.
And I think, Sirrita, that's one of the things that we're going to see are more nonprofits going to be stepping in, are more organizations, Detroit Heals Detroit, being able to kind of fill that gap that maybe our schools might not be able to help so much with.
Trauma is not dealt with in isolation, so it shouldn't be combated in isolation. So that's when these organizations like Detroit comes in and tries to help. It's a collective effort of community combating trauma and making sure our students heal and get through this tough time. So what I hope is that those budgets for those things that de-stress the students don't get impacted like sports or arts.
So last words from both of you. Karen, let me start with you. The things that we need to take into account now moving forward with our kids.
There is still a stigma about mental health in our communities. And so if we really think about what can families do, they can reach out for help when they need it.
Just as practitioners in this work, remembering that our students are going to be mentally affected from this pandemic. So really realizing that as we start school in the fall and doing everything we do to alleviate that stress for them, whether that be having less homework or having less work in class and really making sure we're committed to the mental health as well as the academics because they're both important for our students.
Life is like a pandemic because it's memorable. Coronavirus is going to go down in history, and so will your life. Life is like a pandemic because your perspective determines your joy through it. No prom, typical graduation, or planned last day of school. You can focus on the negatives, or you can shift your perspective. So there you have it. The things Trenton Public Schools taught me about life, symbolized by a pandemic.
And that is going to do it for One Detroit. Thanks so much for joining us. For our extended interviews and our daily coverage, just head to our website at onedetroitpbs.org.
You can find more at onedetroitpbs.org or subscribe to our social media channels and sign up for our One Detroit newsletter.
Support for this program provided by W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first. The Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
From Delta Faucets to Behr Paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929. The DTE Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public TV, among the state's largest foundations committed to Michigan-focused giving. We support organizations that are doing exceptional work in our state. Visit dtefoundation.com to learn more.
Business Leaders for Michigan, dedicated to making Michigan a top 10 state for jobs, personal income, and a healthy economy. Nissan Foundation, and viewers like you.